we'll go ahead and get started. We'll have the panelists introduce themselves and then share a little bit of background about where they grew up, where they're from, and how they got to K-State / their interest in their sport.
Is this one on as well? Hello? Okay, first I just want to take a second and say thank you to everybody for coming today, right? I appreciate you all being here, being in community with us, also taking a minute to listen and learn. My name is Kennedy Felice. I'm an assistant coach with the women's rowing team here at K-State. I've been at K-State 10 going on 11 years now. That includes my time as an athlete before I transitioned into working in a role as a staff member. I worked for a bit in academics before I went into coaching. A little bit of my background growing up, both my parents were in the Air Force, so we moved around quite a bit. And then right before I started high school, they both retired from the military, and then they came to me and they said, hey, guess what? We're moving to Manhattan. And I said, Manhattan, New York, that is so exciting. And they said, no, Manhattan, Kansas. So we found our way here, and it definitely was an adjustment. This is the smallest place I have personally ever lived, and it just took a minute to really feel comfortable here. While I was in high school, as I kind of was thinking about where I was going to go to college, I was pretty adamant that I was not going to go to K-State. I was friends with a lot of people that were third, fourth, fifth generation K-Staters, people who had lived in Manhattan for a very long time, and I just wanted to be different. So as I started looking at schools, I was really focused on schools out on the East Coast. That's where a majority of my extended family still lives. But as I kind of started looking, it just wasn't feeling right, and I couldn't figure out why. Every school was nice enough, people were friendly enough, but I just didn't have that gut feeling that was like, oh, I can really see myself there. After every failed visit or conversation with an admissions rep, my mom would always be like, let's go look at K-State. Let's just hear what they have to say. And I was always like, we don't need to. Like, we're okay. I finally, in April of my senior year, which I recognize is pretty late in the game, now working in recruiting, I decided that, yep, let's go tour K-State, and I loved it. I felt really safe here, felt very welcome, very secure, and I ended up deciding that I would go to school here. By that point in time, athletics wasn't really on my radar. When I was in high school, I didn't play any sports. Part of that was because we moved around quite a bit, but it was also one of those things, once I got interested in athletics, it kind of felt like everyone had been playing club ball since they were like 5, and I don't like being bad at things, so I just didn't jump in. I did just about anything else you can think of, every club, group, organization, theater, journalism, but it was one of those things that athletics just didn't really factor into my college decision. I came here for orientation and enrollment, and that summer, one of the rowing coaches also happened to be on campus. And if you know how we recruit primarily out-of-sport athletes. So we look for tall, athletic, competitive individuals that we can build into D1 athletes. Coach at the time saw me. I had never talked to her before in my life. She marched right up to me, and she said, hey, you're tall. I said, hey, thank you, I am. She said, I have this rowing thing, you should check it out. And I said, no, thank you. I tried to be polite, but I kept the conversation very short because rowing in Kansas sounds like a scam. But my mom is a very sneaky lady, right? And she went and found the coach without me knowing, and she said, hey, here's her name, here's her phone number, we'll set up a call, we'll hear you out. So we did, and after several more times of trying to say no, because I was scared, I was really intimidated by this opportunity. When I was moving into my dorm room, my mom made the decision for us that I was going to do this. And looking back, really grateful. If you talk to her now, she's really proud of herself. She's like, look, I was right, look how it turned out, which is totally fair, but really grateful. K-State, right? This school, this department, our team specifically, brought me a lot of really great people and a lot of really great opportunities, and I'm just excited to be here today.
All right, I'm Ebony Gillum, assistant or associate head coach for our women's basketball team. We had a big win last night. I'm so tired. I stayed up all night thinking about that game. I couldn't even sleep. Anyway, on to the next. We're headed to Oklahoma State, so it's like so short-lived. But I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, and I went to TCU. And actually, our head coach, Coach Mitty, was my coach at TCU. So I've been knowing him since I was like 16 years old because he recruited me there. So that's basically how I ended up here. He was coaching at TCU. I was an assistant coach there. Got the call to come here to K-State. He basically begged me to come, so I came. You know, it was like her. It was a bit of a culture shock for me. I grew up in like the DFW area, like huge city, like a million things to do. Obviously, I stayed local. I went to TCU, so I was still in the city, you know, same people, same. And I probably grew up thinking I would never, like, leave the state of Texas because I was like, it's awesome, it's fun. Why would I ever leave? Every friend I've ever had stayed there. They went to TCU. Nobody ever moved back home. They all stayed there, so it's a fun place. But coming here was just so different. Like, just like, I was like, it's too small. What do you even do here? There's nothing to do. But I've had 3 kids since living here. I have a 9-year-old son, and I have twins. They're 6, they'll be 7 in April. So, I don't know, I've started my entire family, and my kids don't know anything different. You know, they're Kansans, so this is what they know. This is their life, and it's been a real blessing for my family. Because thinking back and thinking about, like, even where I lived in proximity to TCU, I mean, it was traffic. It was like a 35-minute drive, and it's probably really just 10 miles away or something like that. And I don't know, having kids and having to do that actually sounds really horrible. Like, I don't know, you can get to anywhere in Manhattan so fast. And you know what's funny, when I moved here, I live on the other side of town, like off of Highway 24 and Timber Creek 3, that like area over there, yeah. And the taxes are better. So anyway, moved over there. And I was telling people where I live, and I'm like, oh my God, you stay so far away. And I was like, what the? I was like, where do I live? But it's like, you know, like a 12-minute drive. So I don't know, it's been really, living in Manhattan has been really good for my family. Like, it's calm. I see my family enough. It's an easy flight from here to DFW, so we get a lot of visitors. But for the most part, I guess it's been a pretty good adjustment. It was just me and my husband here for a while. I didn't have my kids till, 2018. Now I got to think about when they were born. Okay, we'll just let that go. But anyway, so I guess that's it about me. Yeah, and I played basketball my whole life, and that's basically how I got into coaching. I did not grow up wanting to be a coach, not even a coach in high school, college, or anything. I was a marketing major. I talk a lot. So I was like, yeah, I'll do something with that, work for some corporation and just jabber along. But I got a call from the Fort Worth Independent School District, like one of the ADs called me about a high school coaching job for a horrible high school team. And I almost turned it down, and she kind of convinced me to get into coaching, and that's literally how I started coaching. I coached high school for like 4 or 5 years, and then I got into college, and that's kind of the path I took and got me here. So that's it.
Hi, I'm Jordan Smith. I'm the head coach for women's tennis here. I have been here probably as long as you, Kennedy. This is year 10 for me. Born and raised in Memphis, and I did high school in California. Grew up in a single parent with my mom, my brother. Trying to think, how did I get into tennis? I rebelled. I think my mom wanted me to do academics and piano, and it took me very little time to know that was not going to be for me. Tried to branch out as much as I could, and I was kind of lucky to find tennis in a summer camp. So I did that, trying to think, a couple times a week, and then just kind of fell in love with it and kind of did that, which is a little different coming out of Memphis. I played at University of Memphis as well, and that's when I got my first coaching job outside of college. I coached a women's team, or assistant coach, which kind of helped me lead to K-State about 4 years later. The TCU coach at the time was at Memphis with me, and then he knew Danielle Steinberg, who was the head coach back then, and connected us. And same thing, I got a call, came on an interview, and then got back, and I got offered a job, and I started about 10 days later, which is crazy. I think it's all the same for everyone who's not a product of Kansas. It is a shock. I lived in California and I lived in Memphis, so big cities. Came here and I think we had one Walmart. Target maybe just open. There was one movie theater, so it was different. But I'm really glad that I stayed through it after the first 6 months. Made some friends, made some connections, met other people in the department. So that really helped the transition, because I think if I didn't do that, it's very easy to go to work and then come home and then just not be able to kind of get involved in the community. A lot of first things have happened here. Bought my first house, met my girlfriend, found my dog, because I was told growing up my mom was allergic to dogs, but I haven't seen that at any point in the last 9 years with that dog. In fact, I'm pretty sure they share a bed more than I do with my dog, and so I'll have to question her about that. Yeah, it's been really cool to be a tennis player. I did branch out, or try to branch out a lot. I might have even signed my mom's name on a permission slip to play football. Someone snitched on me really quick. I got to the first practice. I was ready. I was padded up. I see my mom's car roll up. And I'm like, oh, shit. And so it was like middle school football. And next thing I know, so awkward. All my friends, the coaches, my mom comes out. Nope, you're not doing this. I told you no football. And so I had to walk out. It was like the walk of shame, leaving football. And so, yep, there was no more football after that. That's when I knew I was just going to be fully invested in tennis around 7th, 8th grade, and obviously it's helped me out a lot. So, that's a tough lady. I don't recommend trying to go against her or sign her own name. But it's been pretty cool, and I think those who know me, though, pretty straightforward, pretty lucid sometimes. So yeah, it's been good.
Everyone has a different path to K-State. I think that's really cool to see how we all come together today and this year and all of that by different ways. So this month of February, the Big 12's theme for Black History Month is centered around the Maya Angelou quote, "If you're going to leave a legacy, make a mark on the world that can't be erased." And some of you might have seen the basketball teams are wearing shooting shirts with this on them during the month of February as well. So I'm going to ask our panelists, what does this quote mean to you?
I guess I have the mic, so I'll go first. I think that's really powerful in a way, because you want to be known. You want to not only within your family have an lasting legacy, but you want to feel like you contribute to something when you have your time throughout any profession or anything that you do, whether it's work or something you do on the side. So that's kind of what I always want to see, is that, hey, as a tennis player or as a black tennis coach, hey, I want someone else to feel like, hey, that they can want to think about this as a career or something they can see themselves playing or look forward to, because it's not uncommon. And so that's something that I kind of aspire to do. And then just knowing that you're helping people. Even if I don't help them as a tennis player, I can help them as a person. And so that's kind of where I kind of strive to show and do. And that kind of resonates with me with this quote.
I don't know. I kind of take it as whatever you're going to do in life, do it the best that you can do it, the best of your capabilities. I just think sometimes, or even a lot of kids we coach, they try to be other people or try to be what people think or whoever people think they should be. But it's okay to be yourself and leave your own legacy. However that may be. It might not be the flashiest thing. Everybody on social media might not know what that is. But just, be the best you can be at whatever you're doing. And I kind of take that in my career as well, because I've had, I guess, coworkers who have thought about what is the next job, or I want to be a head coach. So they're always thinking about something, in my opinion, outside of what we have going on. I think wherever your feet are, be great at that in that moment, and everything else will kind of fall in place.
I think when I reflect on that quote, a big thing, when I was younger, right, it was, all right, leave a legacy. So similar to what you were saying, where it was like, I have to do something big and meaningful, and I have to get my name out there and make sure people remember who I am. And that is really intimidating to think of how you're going to do that, right? From there, as I've gotten older, and I think especially in this role, where as coaches, you work a job that is very people-focused, and your job is to pour into your athletes and to try to help them become the best version of themselves, right? Whether that's in competition or as people. And so when I think about leaving a legacy, sometimes it can be those smaller things. It can be just being a good person, caring about other people, helping other people to accomplish what they're meant to become. And maybe that is something that's big and flashy, and I think it's recognizing that it doesn't have to be, right, going down in like history books or having it as something where a ton of people know who you are, but just knowing that you've done everything you can to care about others, to be a genuine person, and just to care at the end of the day.
Those were all great answers, very different, but great to see the different perspectives on this one quote, so thank you for that. Next question for our panelists. Are there any moments that in your coaching career, or even in your playing career too, if you want to touch on that, that have tested you, or is there a moment as a coach where you thought like, this is great and a very fulfilling moment?
I think what I want to discuss, it was kind of more of like a theme that happened as an athlete as well as someone who is now a coach. Growing up, I grew up in primarily white spaces, right? I was around a lot of white people, a lot of good people, people who cared, but with that in mind, talking about race wasn't something that people were comfortable with. And I think part of it was that people were afraid of saying something wrong. So there were a lot of times where being black and that aspect of my identity wasn't something that we really highlighted. And so it kind of subconsciously made it difficult to understand what that meant to me, right? Obviously, when you look at me, you see a black woman, but I didn't know how to live that out and what that actually meant, right? Then as I got older, I came to K-State, and all of a sudden, a lot of people really noticed that about me. But it was hard because I didn't know what that actually meant to me. And it was hard because a lot of people wanted to learn and they wanted to have that conversation, but I didn't feel confident that I could actually speak, right, for black people because I didn't understand what that actually meant to me. There were a lot of times, again, very good, well-intentioned people, but it felt like people wanted to recognize me being black when it was convenient for them, right? They wanted to celebrate that and highlight it when they wanted to talk about diversity or rowing overall. I love this sport, this space. It is a primarily white sport though, right? So there were moments where it felt like people wanted to acknowledge it, but then they didn't want to continue the conversation and actually help me figure out what was next. And I know that's hard, right? You don't want to force your athletes or your staff to have conversations they're not ready to, but it was a challenge to figure out, okay, I am a black woman, that is something we can be proud of, but what does that actually look like to me, and what does that actually mean?
I have two answers to that. One is, well, like doing the like kind of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, that whole era, that was a huge challenge. I mean, our entire staff, obviously, but I think being a black woman on the staff, it was an expectation, you know, of can you help us guide some of our black athletes in this moment, which was fine, but it was hard. It was really hard. It was also hard because you realize at that moment we're like we're this family, but everybody has very different opinions on the situation and how they view it because of, you know, their background and how they see things. And I think I personally struggle with how to voice my opinion, but do it in the right way and not to offend other people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a black woman, and there was a lot of things going on that was, you know, hurtful to the black community, but I work with like a lot of white individuals and our players, and so navigating that was probably one of the hardest things like in my career. And I don't do too well with I'm not a good sugarcoater, so I had to really, really, really think about how I wanted to say things. I had to really take a step back and like, okay, how are you gonna say this? And then on a completely different subject, my biggest challenge is just being a mother and coaching and navigating this with 3 kids and missing some of their things because of, you know, what I do for a living. But on the flip side, I think my kids sort of enjoy what I do, so they think it's fun to see me on TV, even though a part of me is a little sad because it's an away game and I'm not there with you. But I think I miss them more than they miss me, to be honest. They're like, hey, what's up? Did you leave? I'm like, okay.
I guess for me, I probably was tested the most as a kid, way more than I would say as an adult. You know, trying to play tennis from an elementary school, it's traditionally black school, actually 100% black for in inner city Memphis. So going that route and starting tennis was so just bizarre to any of my friends, and know that I was probably going to navigate something where no one would follow me because it wasn't something that they would want to do because it wasn't cool. So that was probably a big test at 8 years old when I kind of pursued, hey, I want to play tennis full time. My mom was able to make that a reality for me. And then I realized looking around that, hey, all the kids that I want to hang out with are my tennis friends, not the kids I go to school with, because nobody was interested and I only got made fun of. So that was, probably easier to play soccer or a different sport. And so then going to middle school, I got a scholarship to this private school because, they probably wanted a little more diversity, and I get that. But it didn't matter to me because I got to be around my tennis friends, and they had tennis. In public schools, there was no middle school tennis whatsoever. So that I feel like, from age 8 to 14, and then you get to middle school and you're with a different group, and they're like, hey, why are you not playing football? Why are you not playing basketball? Why are you not playing track? And just keeping your head down and being like, hey, this is what I love. You're not going to tell me something to do otherwise. And so, yeah, that was kind of like always a test growing up. High school, I went to a tennis academy, so I was very fortunate that my tennis helped my mom. And then college, it was fine because I was around people that that respected college tennis. And I probably wasn't tested again until my second coaching job. I did an interview, won't name the school, did an interview somewhere, got hired on, and then afterwards, my boss came up to me and was like, hey, I got a lot of crap from my bosses that I didn't bring you around to the administrative wing to meet them. And I go, why? He goes, well, they really wanted to meet you because of who you were and how you looked. And I have never brought an assistant on an interview to meet them, but they were very adamant that they needed to meet you because you were different. And so that was kind of weird to hear that because they weren't doing it normally. They were only doing it because of how I looked from the outside. So that was a weird test that I hadn't really experienced from college, and then I guess the first 4 years after. But yeah, that was one of the tests. And as far as coaching, I think any coach right now with the NIL era or everything else that we go through where the athletes are winning. I guess there's no athletes in here, so it's okay to say that. They have won. I'm jealous. Yeah, so yes, trust me. That's a test because we're always having to adapt because we don't know how it's going to be. But I guess, the second part of Regina's question, the fulfillment is that the fact that if we can persevere as coaches and keep standing strong to what our standards are, our morals, and just seeing these kids break through, that's what's most important because it's easy to kind of get discouraged or give up because we feel probably more out of our element than they do. So then when we see that they can kind of believe in us and trust us and listen, that's probably the fulfillment I get.
You all for touching on that. Kind of related to what Jordan was saying a little bit, what's something different about when you first started coaching to now that you're coaching over your career?
Yeah, that's it. I coached men before I coached women, and it's a lot the same. They always ask me what's the biggest difference, and I just say I could get my point across in fewer words with the guys, a lot more longer sentences and more thoughtful understanding with the women. But as far as, the game of how tennis needs to be coached won't change. It's just maybe less strategy and just more, emotional support, I would say, out there because they get it. It's different. They're going through different things. And so you got to navigate that. But, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing. And on top of, maybe trying to convince them with monetary value, which is tough.
Oh, God, I'm sure. I still struggle with that. Anyway. Yeah, the NIL and the transfer portal, that's, obviously I played in an era where like you kind of were frowned upon if you transferred. Like, it was like, whoa, what's up with that person? Like, they have issues. But now that's obviously the norm, and us coaches, we're looking at the portal, seeing who transfers. It's a part of our job. That's what we do. So that part has been like very, very, very different from when I first started. It's just such a huge shift. It's the norm now. You don't see every kid like that anymore. And now, our eyes are a little bit more open to, okay, that just wasn't the best situation for them. Oh, they were playing behind somebody else. So, okay, we can give them a chance. So, but on the flip side, I do think dealing with NIL and transfer, and I do think you have to be very, 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 very careful. Because we always say, it's fleas in there. You don't know what you're going to get. But you do not know. So, and I just think K-State is such a great place and such a wholesome place. And we're always worrying about what type of kid we bring in that environment. And I feel like our team has a really, really good culture. So that's always like in the back of our mind, just in a different way than it used to be. Quite different, but not always a negative. It's just, you just have to be on high alert on how you recruit in that way, so.
I think Jordan touched on it a little bit with kind of that like emotional intelligence, something I feel like has changed over the last few years. A lot of our athletes want to know why. Why do we do what we do? It has to have meaning. It has to make sense. Not to be like back in my day, right? But I felt like a lot of times when I was an athlete, you just kind of put your head down. You worked hard because you knew that was the expectation. And we still have athletes, they want to work hard, right? They want to accomplish their goals and want to get to a solid place, but they want to understand why, and they want to have that conversation. So on one hand, right, you're proud of the fact that they're asking questions because you know that's going to prepare them for later in life to make an impact, right? Help have lasting change happen in their careers. But now I think you have to be just more aware of what you're doing, and you have to make it make sense. I also think that patience is something that has shifted a lot. I feel like coming out of COVID time, where people kind of reevaluated what they were doing and what was the long-term goal, because a lot of things paused, right, and were taken away. So now you have to make it make sense. Okay, why am I putting my time into this? Why am I working hard? Why am I making these sacrifices? And I think you have to meet each athlete where they're at. They're a lot more individualized, and I think you have to get to know them on a really personal level to try to help them get to that next level.
Thank y'all for sharing. We'll take a short break. Are there any audience questions that we have? If not, that's okay because we have more questions up here, but anything from the audience that y'all want to know? That's all right. Okay, we'll keep it moving. So what's some encouragement or advice that you would give to people, especially younger people who are looking at getting into coaching? Would you advise them, yes, do it, not do it? What are something that you would say to them looking into getting into coaching?
Whenever I talk to somebody who is interested in this field, first, right, you want to ask them why. Okay, I think why kind of sets the foundation for what you're doing, and I think from there, I try to have an honest conversation. I know we've talked about it a little bit with some of the sacrifices that go into this career field. I know every school is different, every program is different, but it is not a traditional 9-to-5, right? It is going to impact some of your outside relationships, things like that. Obviously, you can find balance, you can make it work, but you have to understand that this career field, it is different. And at other schools, I have friends who have been in positions where it's not a very stable career field. Right, we're very fortunate at K-State. I know our program specifically, it is very stable, but that's not something that's common for all of college athletics. So once athletes or any young person kind of understands some of that risk involved, going forward, I encourage people to pursue this field, right? Especially whenever I'm talking to young women who are interested in this field. It's one of those things, we've made a lot of strides when it comes to representation, but if you look at the Tucker Center, it's a group out tied to the University of Minnesota. They look at the state of women college athletics overall. Okay, before Title IX passed, 90% of women's teams were coached by women. Today that number is right around 45%, and that has increased over the last decade or so, but there's still work to be done there. When you look at rowing specifically, about 30% of head coaches are women. And then if you take it a step further and you look at women of color, right, minority individuals, there is one head coach in all of rowing, right, that is a minority. With that in mind, the only way that you see those statistics change is by people being brave enough to pursue this field and to be passionate about it and to want to make a change. So if we understand everything that's involved with this and we're still passionate and want to pursue it, I think it's a very rewarding field. I love what I do. I love being able to come to work every day. So I encourage people to pursue this opportunity.
Yep, I would agree. I definitely encourage people. Well, depending on who you are, I don't think it is for everybody actually, but so I'm like, not you, but I don't know. I think for the most part, I've actually had these conversations with ex-players, and I think the biggest thing is they don't realize, like, when we send them home from practice, that we stay here and work. And it's like actually really funny, but we've gotten that a lot. They're like, wait, so when we're done with practice, you're still working? Like, I'm like, yes, we'll come up here on a Sunday and y'all are at home sleep. Like, so I think, in my opinion, just wrapping their head around like what it takes, to be a coach overall. And yes, it can be hard, but I do think you have to love what you're doing to be able to do what we do, or love the game at least. Otherwise, it could obviously go the opposite way. So, I mean, me sacrificing, not being with my kids and my husband to travel around and coach basketball, it's because I love what I do. I enjoy it. I enjoy our players. I enjoy making an impact on their lives. So that's usually why I tell most kids who are trying to get into this field. But we have had some people try and fail miserably because they don't understand how hard it is. And so to those kids, I usually advise them, because it was the route I took, to maybe try high school or something first. High school is a completely different dose. I mean, it's more parent involvement. It's very humbling, I know when I coached high school basketball, I had been out of college a couple years. I actually played one season in Iceland because I was like trying to play overseas, and then I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to do this, and then I got that call. Well, you get to high school program, and it's like, why are you playing basketball? Why are you even playing if you don't like it? Why are you playing if you don't want to play in the summer? Why are you playing if you don't want to, like, shoot after practice? Literally, most of them are not like that, and that's the humbling part of it. And I think me understanding that not everybody wants to do this for life. Not everybody wants to play basketball in college, and some of these kids are doing it because their friends are doing it, and they just think it's fun, and that's okay. So I kind of had to take it, like, not so much so serious, and more of like, they're doing this for fun, and while they're here, we're gonna make sure it's fun for them. And high school was very rewarding for me because I took over a really bad team, and I mean, won like 3 games the year before I got there. We got to 10, and then an extra 20, and we're competing. And I ended up leaving that team after 2 years, and I cried so hard because I had so much fun with them. I ended up going to a team that was way better, but I had my most rewarding, most fun time with that first team I coached. And I think that was just kind of the beginning of me, like, seeing the impact you can have on kids. So, I mean, I kind of turned it into myself, but that's usually what I tell people.
I think Kennedy and Ebony already nailed it, but I'll piggyback on a couple of things that they said there. I think kind of going into what Kennedy mentioned with the percentage of women getting into coaching. I was on a panel a few years ago in our coaches convention, and that was a big thing. Lack of diversity, lack of gender equality, I would say, across the board in coaching positions. And one of the points was, it's very easy, especially on the women's coaching side, why are males taking all the female jobs? And that's one way to look at it, But one thing that I kind of spoke back and was like, how many of you coaches have, tried to encourage your own players and develop them to be future coaches? Because you never know who is going to be the next great coach. It could be someone, currently in your team that you maybe didn't consider because you're always looking outward and you're not looking inward. And that's something that's been pretty fortunate for me in my time here at K-State, is that over the 10 years that I've been here, I think at least close to a dozen of my former players are now into coaching, whether it's in college or private. I mean, I'm very fortunate right now that my assistant played for me all 5 years, and now she is my assistant coach, and seeing what she's able to do. And not once did I put that on her or pushed it. I just try to lead by example. You know, you want them to follow their path and do whatever they want. But if you set a good mark, then they could aspire to be something in the coaching realm. So that was pretty cool to see. And, you know, I think you do have to know who you're dealing with if you are going to encourage, and maybe tell some people, like Ebony said, you're not going to make it. Or just say, hey, this is probably not for you, if you're not willing to sacrifice or be like a sponge or be adaptable in any situation. I do think that you're probably going to see less coaches that are going to be doing it for 30 to 40 years because of how much this is changing recently, until it stabilizes a little bit. But you know, it's rewarding if you want to make it rewarding. If you want to make it challenging, then yeah, it's going to be challenging. But just like anything in life, it's what you make of it. And I think it's pretty cool if you can get into this, but it wasn't planned. I think a lot of coaches that have been successful were probably secondary coaches. They probably primarily looking for another career, or probably wanting to do something else, and this is kind of what led to them unexpectedly, and actually it was probably for the best. You never know. So at least I can say that for myself. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand.
Thank you all. This will be our last question. If you weren't coaching, what would you be doing? Or if there was anything else that you would want to do besides coaching, what would you do?
I mean, some of these consultants are doing really well with their lives, you know, so no one knows what they do. You just consult, tell people what they already know. For me, I obviously wanted to be a lawyer. That was always the track I wanted to be. After life hit me hard, I realized professional tennis was not going to happen. So, you know, LSAT, pre-law major, poli-sci, everything. And yeah, I mean, that was probably the goal. Even during COVID, I think we brought up COVID when we weren't sure if we were ever going to get back. I remember I got on Amazon and got the LSAT back. I'm like, all right, I got to do something else. You know, I'm 31 years old at the time. I'm like, I got to figure out something. I might not be coaching anymore because they could just, you know, get rid of everything during COVID. Thankfully, we got back on track. You know, let's not forget those motivational speakers. That's another thing that could be pretty beneficial and also a little easier. Shout out to those people too.
Okay, I've been thinking about this answer and I have no idea. I mean, like in college, I started off as like broadcast journalism. I was like, yeah, I want to be on TV doing the weather or something. I don't know. And then I changed it to business marketing, which I loved. But if you really pay attention to it, that's literally what I do right now. I market K-State, women's basketball is literally like exactly what I do. And it's always group projects. That's all we do. It's a bunch of us together. So, I don't really know. I just think basketball has literally been my entire life. It's kind of like I've done it since I can remember. And during my little break when I didn't know what I wanted to do, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. That's why I ended up doing basketball. So, I mean, I don't know. I went back and got my master's, and that had anything to do with college coaching. I said at one point I wanted to be an athletic director, and I didn't know what level, if that was like high school, college. Look, no. With all these changes, you can keep it. No. So, I mean, that was one thing I thought about. But, you know, it really is kind of a hard question, you know, and it's also like, what if you can't do this anymore? What will you do? Probably something to do with basketball, but just not coaching. But being around the sport is what I would assume.
I think similar to everyone else, coaching was not the original career path. Obviously very grateful that I found my way here, but that growing up, right, it wasn't like, yeah, this is what I'm gonna be doing. I worked at the Boys and Girls Club for a very long time. When I was 16, I started out there. I was really fortunate. We had a family friend who worked in the organization, so I got to start a little bit younger than most staff do. And I worked primarily with like different sports development programs. So I think I would still be doing something in sports, probably something more in like the nonprofit area specifically. I don't know for sure what I would be doing if I wasn't coaching, just because I have really enjoyed this, and it's definitely something that I'm passionate about, but it would likely be something with the Boys and Girls Club.
Awesome. Thank you all. We're glad that you are in coaching and that you're here. So we'll give our panelists a round of applause. And like I said, we have Lunch and Learns coming up in March and in April as well. Shelby will get the slide here so y'all can see the dates for that. You can see them maybe. I can't see them from here. But I think it's March 4th and maybe April 6th or something like that. March will be a women's either coaches or staff panel similar to this with different people up here from K-State. And then in April, we'll be doing the green bandana training with the K-State mental health and sports psychology staff about suicide prevention. I know Jordan's team has done it, and a couple other teams have done it here at K-State, but to do it as a staff and learn more about that. So thank you all again for coming. And if you haven't signed in, I think we got most of you, but the sign-in sheet is over there. And as you leave, we have a QR code up on the board that we'd love to hear your feedback on today's Lunch and Learn and any other comments or whatever you want to provide, so you can scan that QR code and send that in. So thank you all.